Hi, and welcome to the fifth grade PLC. Today is Tuesday, November 30th, 2021, and I'm Diana Tice. I will be presenting today in our grade level PLC, and along with me, I have Miss Brown as the timekeeper. Um, Miss Cromer will be the facilitator today, and sitting in is my literacy specialist mentor, Jamie Bolin. And I'm Diana Tice. So today I wanted to present to you or talk to you about content word walls for improving comprehension. Um, this has been something that I have looked into and researched throughout the summer, and something that I came into this school year feeling very confident about and also feeling very strongly about it. So it's kind of been, I guess, my campaign this year to get more teachers involved with a content level word wall or content area word wall, as well as an academic language word wall. So some of the actual data and some of the actual information that I've received has been firsthand because I've witnessed it in my classroom. So hopefully you will also maybe jump on the bandwagon for vocabulary word walls by the end of this PLC meeting. And as always, I would just be open to answering questions, helping you as much as possible, sharing information, and just maybe getting you started on your way to providing your students with a content level word wall and an academic language word wall, because I have really seen the growth of my students firsthand from offering these two things in my classroom this year. So getting started. I'm sorry, here we go. The table of contents, or what we'll be viewing today on the slides, is the agenda for the meeting, a vision statement, part one of the project, which is the problem statement, the references that I used as resources. The next slide would be intervention steps and the outcome. The next slide, I have some examples, as well as the slide after that, I actually have some student work samples. And then some data analysis, followed by a follow-up and recommendations. So again, today's PLC meeting is Tuesday, November 30th. And our agenda for today looks like this. I've assigned roles already. So now I'd like to give you a brief explanation of the teacher leader program and the teacher leader in PLC signature assessment, which I am presenting today. So I'm in my last class for my degree, my master's degree as a literacy specialist at the University of the Cumberlands. And the final class is called Teacher Leader in a PLC. So we have studied throughout the semester, or the bi-term, I should say, about PLCs, what PLCs are for, how to have effective PLCs. And so, of course, our signature assessment is presenting a PLC in the correct way. Also, giving ideas to teachers, which is something that a literacy specialist would do anyway, collaborating and sharing ideas. So I'm really excited to present this because it is something that I feel very strongly about, and I think it will benefit all classrooms and all teachers, not just social studies, which happens to be my classroom, but all the content areas. From ELA to math to science. I feel like every classroom in our building should have a content level vocabulary word wall, as well as a academic vocabulary word wall, where we are sharing actually the same academic vocabulary throughout the grade levels. And so the next thing I would like to do is talk to you about my vision statement. And my vision statement as a literacy specialist is to help students develop the skills necessary to become confident readers and writers, to feel secure and comfortable enough to take risks in a safe and nurturing environment, to develop an inclusive classroom atmosphere in which all students learn to appreciate and respect the diversity in their classmates, to inspire a lifelong love of learning by helping students overcome reading and writing difficulties through identification, intervention, and cultivation of attitudes about reading. And last, I felt the need to add one about teachers, to empower teachers to think outside the box and embrace change through support and confidence in new ideas and strategies. And hopefully by the end of this PLC, I will have given you some new ideas and strategies to test out in your own classroom. So moving along, part one is a problem statement. We were asked to identify a problem within our classroom and then do some research on that problem, take some data on that problem, and also to use a strategy, to implement a strategy or an intervention that could possibly change things or change the outcome of the problem. So my main problem this school year has been an increasing decline in the reading comprehension among our students. This lack of comprehension is presenting issues in my social studies classroom, as social studies texts are often more complex than other content area texts. And in order to increase text comprehension, the research suggests the best way to increase comprehension in middle grade students is to intentionally teach vocabulary strategies through the use of an interactive word wall in the content area classroom. I spent the majority of my summer, as I said before, researching this idea because one day it really just, the light bulb came on and I realized that what I was hearing made perfect sense. With younger kids, we start with things like phonemic awareness and work our way up to vocabulary. But when we have fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth graders, phonemic awareness is not the best place to start. So where do we start with middle grade kids? And every single article, journal entry that I read, all pointed to explicit vocabulary instruction. Excuse me. So that is where this campaign of mine has come from. So I did spend the majority of my summer working on a content word wall. And I'm happy for anybody to come and take a look at that. I think everybody here has seen that in my classroom. And also the academic word wall. The academic words, which I'll talk about more later, have really enhanced my social studies classroom this year. And I'll give you some more information later about how. But the research points, excuse me, to the need for in-depth word knowledge in order to increase reading comprehension. So the three qualities of effective vocabulary instruction should include integration, repetition, and meaningful use. What I focused on with this particular statement is not only the integration and repetition, but also the meaningful use in the classroom. Letting the students use that, the vocabulary for more than just, we go way beyond a word and a definition. Further, the use of a word wall in the content classroom is supported by research. The interactive word wall intervention illustrates the efficacy of word walls as a literacy tool for use with effective instructional practices to support vocabulary learning and teaching in middle and secondary classrooms. So for successful learning within and across middle grade classes, students must know what these general and discipline-specific academic vocabulary words mean and know how to use them when reading, writing, and orally communicating in class. Students encounter thousands of new words each year, so making vocabulary And that makes vocabulary instruction all the more important as teachers. Excuse me. And here's just a list of a couple of the articles that I used for reference. I'm happy to share the links to these articles with you if you're interested in reading more. So part 2, intervention steps and outcome. So I began with a new unit, and I performed this intervention with just my first period class to start. So in my first period class, they were given a pre-assessment consisting of unit-based vocabulary words, as well as the academic words that we were going to cover, or academic verbs, as I like to call them, the to-do words for the unit. So students were then given a FRAIR model to interact with new social studies vocabulary words and develop 4 different representations of the words, including a definition, a picture or non-linguistic representation, some examples, followed by using the word in a sentence. This is a little different from the original FRAIR model, and I'll show you an example of that in just a minute. The research shows using FRAIR models in vocabulary requisition allows students to conceptualize words. So again, we're going beyond a basic word and definition, but the students are able to use the words, to work with the words. The models were then glued into the social studies interactive notebooks to use as a tool throughout the unit and really throughout the entire school year. We use our interactive notebooks frequently in the classroom. All vocabulary words were posted on the word wall as well in the classroom. At the end of the first week, after using the vocabulary words in context and class discussion, students were given the opportunity to take a post-test, which was the same as the pre-test, to show improvement in scores. And so the next slide is actually an example of the FRAIR model. This is the traditional FRAIR model with the definition, the illustration, the examples, and then they sometimes will ask for non-examples. I think this is a great model. However, I felt like to utilize the vocabulary in a sentence would maybe be a better choice for my social studies students. And of course, in the oval in the center, they would put the vocabulary word. My kids love doing the FRAIR models. The next slide, I have student examples. I gave an example of a higher student, a middle student, and a lower student. And if you look at each one of these examples, you will see that even the lowest student was able to fill in the FRAIR model adequately enough to be able to refer back to it, and also to be able to have that contextualization with the vocabulary words. The 2 words that we used on these FRAIR models were oppression and the navigation acts. So I think they did a great job with this, and they really honestly enjoy, I don't know if it's the box, the model that we're using. Most of my students love using graphic organizers. But the FRAIR model, they have really, really just taken to the FRAIR model, and they enjoy filling those out. So, and now the data. Part 2 is the data analysis. And this is just a visual representation of the pre-test and post-test scores. The pre-test scores are in blue and the post-test scores are green. And if you look, I did this by student. So I have 23 students in my first period class. With the exception of student number 9, who happened to be absent for the pre-test, although they were available for the post-test. Student 11, who is actually a pass-fail student. It does not show on the graph, but it will show in the table that I show you next, that he passed both the pre-test and the post-test. And if you also notice, everyone had growth between the pre-test and post-test, except for one student who did not change. They stayed the same with the pre-test score as well as the post-test score. And so here's the table that I was talking about that lists the student by number. It lists the pre-test score as well as the post-test score. And I did average the pre-test and post-test scores. The pre-test average score was a 55. The post-test average score was a 75. So quite a bit of growth is shown there. So my follow-up and recommendations, after reviewing the data from both the pre and post tests, all students showed improvement with the exception of one that didn't change in vocabulary acquisition through the use of the FRAIR model and using content and academic vocabulary where they were able to conceptualize ideas about the vocabulary. This mastery of the new vocabulary led to an overall improvement in the comprehension of the unit text and promoted more enriched discussions and discourse in the social studies classroom. Our discussions became intentional. They weren't just teacher asking questions, student giving direct answer. We actually had discussion where we thought about and we built on other students' answers. I always encourage discourse in my social studies classroom. It's okay to disagree. As long as we're respectful, to the other person, we engage in civil discourse. And I do encourage them that it is okay to have your own opinion about something as long as we're able to respect others' opinions as well. I did receive a comment during a visit in the classroom from our assistant principal who actually came to me and said, I hear a lot of academic language going on in this discussion that you're having. And I was very proud of that fact because that was the whole point of having an academic word wall along with the content vocabulary words. So I will continue to utilize FAIR models to intentionally teach vocabulary in my social studies classroom. I would also encourage all teachers in my building to utilize a word wall and concentrate on both content area and academic vocabulary to promote improvements in comprehension of context area texts. With that being said, that intentional instruction has to be something more. Again, I've said it multiple times today, but I'll say it again. It has to go beyond word and definition. If we don't give students the opportunity to actually use the words, to practice using those words, to practice writing those words, to practice talking about those words, then the vocabulary instruction is not really going to do any good in the long run. In fact, it probably is going to end up being a waste of time on the teacher's part, of good instructional time, if we're not teaching vocabulary in a more contextualized way. So again, I thank you so much for listening. I am happy to share resources, any of the resources that I used today, any of the research that I've done. I have lots of handouts that you could use. I have books. I have a FRAIR model that I'm happy to share as well. Anything that I could do, even sitting down and helping you come up with the content vocabulary for a word wall. And I'm happy to share my academic words as well. And I would encourage every teacher, not just my team teachers in 5th grade, but every teacher in our building to really consider, especially maybe over Christmas break, to start with the new year, to utilize a vocabulary word wall as well as academic word wall. Because I think that, the research, obviously the data speaks for itself. And I think that you will notice a big difference in your students, just in the way they talk in your classroom. So thank you so much. And I'm happy to share anything that I can with you and collaborate with you in any way I can. So thank you so much for listening.